So the cosmos, the creation, is a theater for revealing the glory of God. And its reality as the cosmos, that is, it's having the qualities which make it that organism which we call the cosmos. That reality is only possible through its carrying out that disclosure. That is, it is in its internal nature an instrument by which the glory of God is declared, and so it is fully realized as totally and perfectly actual, as really real, when it carries out that disclosure. For example, when we have a mirror, we measure its success as a mirror according to the degree it reflects actual light. It is only a mirror in and through the fact that it reflects light. If it ceased to actively have that quality and that relation to everything which surrounds it, it would cease to be a mirror. In other words, its relationship is intrinsic and internal to its being what it is. Now, when we realize that this is true of the cosmos, that it is, as Father Dumitru Staniloae says, a theater for the disclosure of God's Trinitarian life, that is, his life as communion, we must conclude that our current world, as it presently exists, is, in many respects, mysteriously unreal. Or, more precisely, it is only partially real. According to the, I think, most natural and certainly the historical interpretation of 20th century physics, the potential of a particle, and thus of all matter, to take on a specific quality in contrast to other qualities, well, that potential only is realized in its actuality by the joining of its being to a person who observes it. This is the classic collapse of the wave function. So when a thing becomes more and more real, it becomes more and more specific. It excludes most of the possibilities which had existed prior to its actualization. So if you think about the development of a human being, when a human being is first conceived, he or she looks indistinguishable from every other fetus which is conceived in the womb of its or his or her mother. But as the person develops and grows, he or she becomes more and more distinctly him or herself. At birth, the child looks quite similar to most other children in its place of birth, but you notice some distinctive features already. You can generally identify its basic pattern of ancestry and national background. You can identify traces of features that are present in the faces of the parents, but only traces. And so you see that part of the distinctness of a self is actually the unique ways in which it is likened to other selves, which significantly undermines or at least relativizes this idea that the distinctness of a subject is in opposition to its unity with other subjects. According to the Christian interpretation of the world, that is the inverse of the truth. A thing is distinct in and only in its unity with other things. Its distinctness is constituted out of its mode of unity. C.S. Lewis, I think, accurately points out that much of what we take in our fallen state to be ourselves is really not ourselves at all. It's exactly what makes us utterly indistinguishable from everybody else. Everybody is obsessed with sex and television and chicken fingers. But as we grow in grace, as Christ lives in us, as we give up ourselves to Christ, it is only in that giving up that we truly become really ourselves. And we become more ourselves than we ever imagined was possible. And this happens as we dwell in the mind of God, as God knows us into existence. And this principle, which we can see in the development of an individual human being, in the development of human nations, the human family as a whole, we can see this principle extending from top to bottom in the entire creation, whether we're talking about it considered as a unified whole or whether we are simply speaking of the realm of subatomic particles. So we know, if modern physics is correct, that the great majority of space that makes up a apparently solid object is empty space. We perceive a thing to be very solid, but in reality, at least when we mean by reality, its underlying physical state in terms of the proportion of empty space to particles, they're ghost-like. They're wisps of wind. The prophets speak of the creation in this age as being like grass that grows and it is renewed in the morning, but in the evening it fades and withers. Well, how can Jacob stand? Amos asks, if Jacob is indeed part of this world. And Isaiah gives us the answer when he says, the word of our God shall stand forever, the logos of our God, in the Greek language. And that is the significant thread in the background of John's Gospel. In the beginning was the Logos, and the Logos was with God, and the Logos was God. He was in the beginning with God. It is the Logos who stands and gives life and reality to everything else in the creation, because God is the existent one, and God thus endows everything else which does exist with existence. The apparent emptiness of most so-called solid objects corresponds beautifully with a key spiritual principle. We say that God has no body, but this is only because what we call a body is a pale shadow of his intense concreteness. God is not less than a body, but infinitely more than a body. He is no ethereal mist floating vaguely and invisibly through space, but the infinitely thick rock of ages. He is the most solid of all things, such that in contact with any creature, it is always the creature who is changed and shaped. It is never the God of Israel. Just as a diamond can only be scratched by that which matches its thickness and its solid constitution. When God enters into the world, everything is shaped after the shape of his being and never the other way around. The question for us is whether we will utilize our power of willing to freely embrace that inevitable, inescapable destiny. In the scriptures, death is always spoken of as that which precedes resurrection. After all, the day does not begin with the morning, it begins with the evening. The psalmist says that our present age is like a dream, and it is identified and marked out as a dream when the era of the redemption comes. This is what Psalm 126 verse 1 says, when the Lord restored the captivity of Zion, we were like those who dream. The redemption of the world in the work of Jesus and its implementation in the church through the Holy Spirit. This is the good dream that is made real. It's fascinating that the Hebrew word, and I just learned this just now. The Hebrew word that is used to describe dreaming can also refer to a state of health or strength. And what is health but wholeness? It is integrity. It is a thing that is as it is supposed to be. A dream is that which occurs in the mind. And when we ask the question, what is it which distinguishes our dreams from our waking life? It's the relative instability of the dreams. Things are always popping in and out. Locations are not stable. Things are bubbling up and bubbling away, disappearing, reappearing. There seems to be little intrinsic connection linking all the various parts together into a single organic whole. Now, the waking world is relative to our dreams far more stable, but it too is a realm of appearance and disappearance. Things come into existence and pass out of existence. But according to the psalmist and according to the whole message of the scriptures, God, who has known the world into existence, who has endowed it with being by realizing an idea present in his mind, God will unite the world with its archetype present in himself by pouring himself into the creation. And thus, it will be recognized that what came before was but a dream. Death precedes resurrection, evening precedes morning, and sleep precedes waking. And so you see throughout the scriptures that sleep is an analogy to death. We have the state we are in when we dream contains a number of curious analogies to the state of the disembodied soul. I've noticed that in dreams where I become aware that I'm dreaming, attempting to utilize the physical representation of my limbs just doesn't work. You have to think your way around. It is your thought which moves you and not your physical appendages, because in fact the physical appendages are not truly present. And it's curious to me that if all a dream is a projection of things that we have learned by rote habit in our waking life, if that's it, then why are dreams so consistent, not only in one person, but among many people? Why are they so consistent in ways which have no direct parallel in waking life? I just raised that as a question. I don't have a direct answer to give to you at this point, but I think it's something that should be thought about. So a dream is marked out as a dream by its deep instability, the things that pass in and out of being. And in the world to come, when God is, in the words of St. Paul, all in all, the creation will awake from its slumber, and it will become infinitely and totally real.